I'm Rena Saltsman, and I am part of the Rehmann marketing team, and I am here today with Mark Spaak and Paul Kennedy, and we are going to be talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, I feel like, is something that is in the headlines all over. It's something that, especially in 2022, just with current events, has been a constant topic that's just been coming to the surface. Not just from an individual standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. Across industry, we're seeing that companies and all over the world are even, seeing this as a big concern. And so wanted to have a conversation with you guys today because this is something that's come up, and you guys are experts here at Rehmann for our technology solutions, and you guys are boots on the ground working with our clients day to day. And one of the things that actually really sparked this conversation is some calls that have been coming in to Rehmann Technology Solutions, specifically around cyber insurance. I think many people know that cyber insurance exists. They know that they need cyber security, but let's talk today about cyber insurance, what it is, why it's important, and really what are these questions that companies are coming to us asking about. To start, Paul, I was wondering if you could give us some background on why cyber insurance is important. So we have security measures in place, but why is the cyber insurance an important piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, pleasure to be here talking today, Rena, and really looking forward to this conversation. I think it's incredibly important for our clients and anyone out there to be thinking about cybersecurity as well as their cyber insurance needs. So cybersecurity insurance is something that's very crucial for organizations to have, because the reality is that no matter how well you protect your own organization, you're always going to have some risk left over, that you'll have some sort of event and that you'll have a lot of costs that are incurred from a cybersecurity event. And so cybersecurity insurance is there to help organizations pay for those costs that are incurred, whether it's the direct labor costs, or you have to have some sort of payout due to a ransomware event, or any of the costs that might be incurred from bringing in an external service provider to help remediate your environment and make sure that you're secure going forward. So cybersecurity insurance is there to help make sure that when you actually do have an event, because it's a matter of when, not if, that you will be able to afford those losses and make sure that your business can stay focused on actually being a successful business going forward.
Yeah, I love when you say that it's about when, not if. I think we hear about that, but it's true. And as stats come out every single year, I feel like the percentages just keep rising as far as how soon will it be until you get cyber attack, or there might be some type of vulnerability that you face. One thing that I do want to talk to is, cyber insurance is there to help with that cost that might come. I know that in conversations we have talked a little bit about there is somewhat of a formula that we kind of look at as far as what those costs could be. And Mark, do you mind potentially speaking to that a little bit on what those costs could be or what that formula might look like?
Yeah, you bet. So, many organizations, depending on the vertical that they're in, if they're financial, if they're healthcare, if they do manage protective or sensitive data types, maybe we've got financial data, maybe we've got social security numbers, maybe we've got private health information, et cetera. Each one of these industries, there's a value that's placed on each one of those individual records. And so if you are an organization that does manage that data, you store it, it's used in transit, whatever it may be in the general course of business. If we just look at the average record cost, actually looking at, current trends, there's different values for those records. So when we look at healthcare, when we look at financial, typically are two of the top most expensive records that are in high demand by threat actors. And so on average, we'll see anywhere between $210 per record down to about $180 per record. So, it's very easy to just do some quick math and just say, okay, how much do I manage as an organization how much is in my possession. And then you also kind of look at retention, right? Because you've got retention requirements to hold that information for a period of time. As you extrapolate that out, you can find that those risks and that cost, it gets high very, very quick. And so when you start talking about a potential data breach where that data is involved or affected, now you're talking about regulatory fines, you're talking about a number of different things coming to the surface where many organizations just don't have the operating capital to be able to sustain that kind of a loss and get back up and running quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that makes so much sense. I mean, you go and you said like $200 potentially per record. So even if you have 1,000 records, you know, that number adds up so quickly. And I even think for healthcare or small to mid-size practice, potentially, that could be a huge cost, or just a small to mid-sized business. Like, you know, that is something to be aware of specifically, and why that cyber insurance is extremely important, because it helps with that cost.
And one of the secrets that, I shouldn't say it's really a secret, but one of the statistics that's not well known is that many organizations that suffer some type of a cyber attack, especially when you look at our small, medium businesses, the trend was in 2021, about 60% of those businesses closed their doors within 6 months after a cyber attack. So when you look at the overall damage that can occur to an organization, you know, not only on the regulatory penalty side, but then one of the things we don't consider is our brand and our reputation, right? Yeah. Because when it comes out that organization has had a breach, if I'm a consumer of whatever product or service that organization produces, do I trust that organization that I'm going to continue to want to do business with them? That becomes very difficult to recover. So it's a really big issue for many organizations to tackle, and it's not talked about enough about how many businesses truly have to close their doors after the fact.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
If I can jump in there, I think there's one other point that I think a lot of organizations haven't really considered in the past. In addition to the actual data breach aspect of a cybersecurity incident, you look at the average downtime from a ransomware event or some other form of cybersecurity incident, it can range anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks, depending on how severely your organization is impacted. And so if you're a manufacturing organization or someone that doesn't have a lot of regulated data, you still have a lot of exposure in a cybersecurity incident, because if you look at your downtime costs, if you can't be getting your parts out the door to your customers, which we all know with labor challenges and whatnot, supply challenges, we have enough problems getting parts out the door as it is. But if you look at those downtime costs and then you say, hey, I might not be able to produce parts, or I might not know who to ship them to, or whatever, and I can't do that for 1 to 3 weeks, you'll see those costs add up very quickly for institutions that also don't have regulated data.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, especially for manufacturers, as we look at that, I mean, I don't think any of them at this point, especially, they're still feeling it from last year and the years prior, just having to close their doors for a certain amount of time. I don't know if anyone feels like they can afford 1 to 3 weeks. And that's something that is a big piece to consider, especially when it comes to manufacturing. And Mark, I really like this, you know, the thought about even brand and reputation. I'm in marketing, and that's something that I haven't even sat down and thought through a lot. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle that, like, wow, okay, probably should think about that a bit more, because that is true. As a consumer, why would I want to purchase from someone who has had an issue with the breach? You know, I know cyber insurance doesn't necessarily solve that issue, but it is one of the pieces that actually does help in that process and helps protect a business in some ways, in circumstances where you can actually focus on that response versus having to worry about the weight of the costs. So I want to keep us moving on and really talk about some of those cyber trends with cybersecurity insurance that, you know, over the past 1 to 2 years. Paul, do you think you could speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I continue to see what I'll call alarming numbers as you look at cyber security insurance. And, that comes down to both on the insurer side, how much they're having to pay out because of losses. I saw a Harvard Business Review article recently where they were talking about ransomware attacks increased 150% in 2020.
Wow.
And the average payout on those attacks. Sorry, let's say that one more time.
In 2020 alone, it went up 150%.
In 2020 alone, it went up 150%. And then the other side of that as well is that the average payout on each of those ransomware attacks increased 82% from 2020 to 2021, which, so there's a lot more attacks happening. The payout that the attackers are demanding is increasing, and organizations are unfortunately finding they have to pay it or they may not be able to get their data back.
Wow.
And so that's causing cyber insurers to significantly increase premiums, significantly increase the actual things that they'll require before they'll even consider insuring you. So cyber insurers are grappling with this of how do they afford to actually provide organizations cybersecurity insurance? And then organizations trying to get cybersecurity insurance are grappling with, hey, I might even be able to get cybersecurity insurance based on the amount of security control I have in my environment.
Yeah. It's an interesting point. And I know that that's one of the big pieces that actually brought this conversation up was some of the phone calls that we've been getting is, why can't I even renew? I have it. Why can't I renew it? And, Mark, I think you're the one who brought this up in a past meeting is those calls are, it's not just one or two. We're getting, a few different calls on that. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit on what those calls have looked like and just what you've been hearing, even just currently within our current client base or within some of the, the friends and partnerships that we have. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what are people even saying when it comes to that.
Yeah. So, a lot has really changed ever since the geopolitical landscape really shifted with Russia and Ukraine. If you look at some of the warnings that are coming out of our government, they're basically telling U.S. companies to batten down the hatches. Russia has been very forward about having tentacles into the U.S., into infrastructure, into organizations, and threatening to potentially use that if there's any action that's taken against Russia. So, companies are nervous. Naturally, the insurers and the underwriters are nervous. And really what we saw within the insurance landscape is for many of those premier underwriter players in the space, they shifted very quickly. They started adjusting their approach. They started adjusting their procedure. Many insurers will not even give you an initial quote or any initial understanding of potential coverage until you fill out a full application, a full attestation statement. And in some cases, we're now starting to see, and I think this trend is going to continue through the year, that many insurers are taking these organizations and they're doing their own vulnerability and penetration assessment against the organization to say, okay, this is what you said on your attestation statement. What can we see in your public IP addresses? We're going to scan you and we're going to see if we see anything that's of concern. And if we do, then that's going to dramatically change the kind of policy that we're going to offer you. And so many organizations that maybe had cyber liability insurance before, there's a couple different flavors. And so, organizations need to be aware, do you just have a rider as part of your errors and omissions, your E&O policy, or do you actually have a standalone policy? And so when it comes time to do that renewal, because of like what Paul mentioned with the mounting losses the last 2-3 years, we've seen not only consolidation in the insurance space, we've seen a lot of insurers that have exited stage left and they said, the losses are too much, we're not going to be in this space. And so you've seen consolidation, which means there's less competition in the market. And so some of the insurers that are still playing the game have ratcheted up their requirements. And so many organizations are trying to go to renew their policy and they're getting these 2- and 3-page attestation statements back and they're going, I'm not sure how to answer this. And so they're working with, organizations like Rehmann to try to answer those questions and go, okay, what protections do I have in place? What am I missing? And so I think what we've really seen literally almost overnight is the insurers have become the regulators.
Wow.
And they are basically mandating, in order for you to get insurance, these are the basic requirements that you're going to have in place. And if you don't, then what you're seeing is either A, you're getting a straight denial, or B, they're going to reduce the amount of indemnity, the amount of total coverage that they're going to give you, or they're going to really start being more and more strict on sublimits by category. They're going to increase your deductible that you may have to pay out of pocket if there is an incident. And many organizations now, Paul mentioned this earlier, how much risk do you have left on the table as an organization? Many organizations don't invest in those good preventative controls. So what do we have to do then? We have to transfer more risk to the insurance provider, which means we have to buy more policy and we have to pay a higher premium. And so it's becoming more difficult. And so because insurers are feeling this pain, some companies are having to stack insurance policies, meaning they went to one provider, and that one provider, based on their status, said, hey, we're only going to write you for X amount. But as an organization, based on the business segment that they're in, maybe the data that they manage and that they hold, there is a higher amount of risk that still needs to be covered. Well, now I have to go back into open market, and I've got to find another insurer that I can begin to stack policies to really cover the total amount of risk that I really have. So the picture has changed pretty dramatically. And that's really what's driving all of this activity, is that, organizations are trying to renew, and they're getting really close to their existing policy that's about to come to an end. And they're going, oh no, I'm getting rejections, or there's a huge change in terms, there's a big change in premiums. And so the organizations are kind of going, okay, what's going on here? So that's really what's driving a lot of this behavior.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I like what you said. It's more of that, how much risk is left on the table. And I know, Paul, this is something that you've said a lot, is just like, how much risk are you willing to have? And it's just interesting too, how now the insurers are becoming these regulators, and how you said it happened almost overnight. And so I feel like maybe, businesses are probably scrambling at this point, because the risk level is only growing greater. But to get all of this figured out, I mean, on top of potentially the supply chain issues and all of that, it can be a heavy weight for any business to carry. With all that, those are the things that I know that, those companies have to anticipate. I want to ask you guys, as we kind of come to a close here on this conversation, where should someone start? They have questions. Like, maybe they have an insurance policy, maybe they don't. Where do you even start when it comes to cyber insurance? Paul, do you want to answer that one? I'm going to call on one of you guys. There you go. Paul.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I would say that first thing I would do is be very proactive about your cyber insurance needs. If you don't have a policy yet, I'd highly encourage you to be looking one. If you do, know that there's going to be changes when you go up for renewal. And so as far ahead as you're willing to have that conversation, start having that conversation about what your cyber insurer is going to be looking for, whether it's multi-factor authentication, advanced email protections. They'll be looking for you to be doing vulnerability scanning internally or externally, and I could go through a laundry list of 30 things that, the insurer will put on that attestation, set of pages. But if you start that conversation with your insurer, and then if you don't have the technical knowledge in-house on how to actually get that stuff implemented, then reach out to, someone like Rehmann or someone else that can provide that technical expertise to help figure out how to get those things in place to either reduce the cost of your policy or to make sure that you can get a policy at all.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep. And I would just piggyback on that. And I would say start early. So if you know that your policy is going to be coming due, let's say in November, I would be starting that process much earlier than that. I would start probably at least 60 days in advance to give yourself enough time to start working with a good independent broker and really go out and start shopping and looking in the open market space, because there's going to be a fair amount of process to filling out the applications. having your organization evaluated. I think what we're going to see is probably by the end of the year, most of the major players in the space will be doing their own vulnerability and or penetration testing against every customer that applies for cyber liability insurance. So you're going to want to be prepared for that. And you may see some things on that report that you may not even like as a business owner, so there's going to be some opportunity that there's things that are going to need to be addressed. And a neat story that I like to share is recently I went into the Verizon store to actually transfer service onto my daughter's phone. And unfortunately, in the course of her owning her phone, she had actually dropped it on the ground. So the back glass of the phone had been cracked, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in front of the Verizon rep and, we're working on putting service on it. And he's inspecting the phone and he goes, well, I just want to let you know, I can't put insurance on this phone because it's already cracked. And so, that's one of the things that we need to be thinking about as we move forward. What are we doing as an organization, as a business owner, to make sure that we've got the basic blocking and tackling in place, and making sure that we've got those good protections? It's going to make it so much easier when we get to that insurance underwriting decision-making process. If we've got those pieces in place, it's going to give you the better premium. It's going to give you the better coverage profile. It's going to give you better sublimiting. Your deductible is going to be cheaper. So anything that you can be doing now to get prepared for when that renewal is going to hit, it's important to take those actions.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think this was a really great conversation, and it's a topic that is hot, not just cyber, but the insurance piece. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to discuss this, because I think it's extremely important, because like you all said, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And the urgency is not, start early, it is start now, potentially too. So it's one of those things that I think we all need to be aware of, because it's only going to become a more of a vital need and requirement for organizations. And so appreciate you guys taking the time to talk through this. If there are questions, I know Rehmann Technology you guys are willing to help anyone. That's the one thing I love about it, is you guys are walking alongside our partners and our clients, and just walking with them through the process, and are there to help at any point. And so appreciate it. And until next time, thanks.
Thanks, Rena.
Thank you.